For pretty much as long as I can remember, I've had insomnia. I remember being a little kid, like 4 or 5, and sitting up in the middle of the night listening to my little cassette radio. As I got older, that became routine for me. I would lay awake for an hour or two, long enough to know sleep wasn't coming anytime soon. Then I would get up and look for something quiet to do. Sometimes I would listen to a cassette tape, sometimes I would read, sometimes I would play with my toys. I preferred to read typically, or listen to tapes, and usually around 3 or 4 in the morning I would finally drift off to sleep, then wake up a few hours later to go to work, or school when I was younger. As I got older, I tried all sorts of things to sleep. If there's a home remedy or over-the-counter sleep medication, I've tried it. They work for a little while, then the insomnia slowly takes over. I've tried most of the ones that have to be prescribed too, and while they come with worse side effects, they end up the same way as the other remedies. First, it's just lying in bed with my eyes closed for longer than usual. Then it's tossing and turning for a while before sleep finally comes for me. Then, within a few days or weeks, I'm back to staring at my dark ceiling, wishing sleep would come for me. I've tried rotating the remedies and medications. One night of chamomile tea, one night of melatonin supplements, one night with Benadryl. Hello, Hatman. But even that doesn't work, or doesn't work very well, or doesn't work for very long. The only thing that has ever worked consistently is the devil's lettuce, and I prefer not to overuse that one. So on nights before a big meeting or project at work, I smoke a little and pass out nice and early. But the rest of the time, I'm staring at my ceiling, reading a book, listening to a podcast, or playing around on my phone. And yes, I've tried putting my phone in another room an hour before bedtime. That doesn't help either. If there's a remedy for insomnia, I've tried it, and if some shaman in the mountains or wherever says they found a new one, I try it. So when I got an email from my high school best friend's old email address saying they had found the cure for insomnia, of course I went to meet up with her in an empty parking lot at midnight to get this miracle cure. I'm stupid, okay, sue me. To be fair, I haven't seen this person in quite a while, but we were best friends for like 8 years before we fell out of touch. She knew all about my insomnia. It actually made a lot of sense that she would reach out to me after finding a miracle cure. People say desperation is the most dangerous emotion, and after a lifetime of being desperate for a good night's sleep, I can agree with that. So I get to this parking lot. It used to be a Borders bookstore back in the olden days, and right there is my old best friend in the same car she drove in high school. I'll admit, that seemed weird to me, but hey, maybe she just really loved that car, right? It was in good condition back then, a 2005 Subaru, and still looked to be in good condition when I saw her that night. I wrote off all the weirdness because I'm desperate. You try going your whole life without consistently getting a good night of sleep, and then tell me you wouldn't go to an abandoned parking lot in the dead of a night for a miracle cure. I want to sleep normally, without having to switch to a new drug every week, without having to take those horrible sleeping pills my doctor prescribed that make me feel even worse when I wake up. So I got there, parked my car next to hers, got out and gave her a big hug. She had gotten married sometime in the last 20 years and showed me her ring, then talked about her wife. I'd had a little crush on her our freshman year, and she hadn't come out as gay in high school, so that was a bit of a surprise in that, oh wow, people are more complicated than you realize kind of a way. I told her what I've been up to since high school, working as an electrician and picking up a bunch of hobbies to keep myself entertained on sleepless nights. When I brought that up, she grinned and said, "Come here, you have no idea how great this is going to be." She opened her trunk, and sitting there in the middle was a medium-sized flower pot. There was a plant growing in it, and I could see the beginning of flower buds that were just starting to unfold. I stared at her, shock and probably a bit of betrayal on my face, and said, "Amy, that's a plant, just a flower from the looks of it. If you're going to tell me to make tea, I've tried every single sleep tea that exists." She nodded excitedly, totally skipping my frustration. "Not just any plant, James. That's a variation of the moonflower. It's been crossbred with a blue pea butterfly flower. You probably don't care about all the scientific bits and pieces, but basically this is going to make you sleep and forget you ever had insomnia." I stared at her again, trying to find the words to explain my disappointment. Finally, I said, "How?" She pulled a little plastic sandwich bag out of her purse and showed me some silvery blue flower petals and said, "Once the flowers start blooming, remove one at a time and dry them by hanging them upside down in a dry place. Once they're dry, grind the petals into a powder and sprinkle that powder all over your pillow." I cut in, "My pillow? I don't make tea or something?" She laughed. "Nope. Just sprinkle the dust on your pillow whenever you can't sleep, and then water it every single day. No slacking, you have to remember to water it or it won't work." I chuckled. I'd been put on ADHD medications our senior year and could never actually remember to take them, so I'd started selling them to rich kids instead. When my mom found out, she was really mad and grounded me for a few days, which I thought was weird. I had been expecting a few months if I got caught. But apparently she told my dad she was actually kind of impressed. Anyway, Amy must have remembered that story with the mischievous look she gave me. I won't lie, I felt weird about the whole thing. A flower I'd never heard of was supposed to cure my insomnia. I asked, "If this flower is so amazing, why isn't everyone using it?" Amy shrugged. "The best kept secrets hide in plain sight, right?" I lifted an eyebrow. "I guess." She smiled again and gestured to the flower. "Since we're old friends, I won't charge you what I normally would for this. Typically, I charge people a few hundred for one of these, especially with how close it is to blooming, but I'll sell it to you for just $100. You want it?" To be honest, if she hadn't charged me, I would have walked away without the flower. The whole thing felt really suspicious to me, but when she said she charged for the plants, it made me feel better. I guess I thought if she had ulterior motives, she would give it to me for free. But charging me made it seem more like a legitimate business deal. I got an image in my head of her selling these plants on Etsy or some other online retailer, and it calmed me slightly. She was always the girl who did bake sales and lemonade stands, so this too just fit in with what I knew about her. I pulled out my wallet, gave her the wad of 20s I keep in there just in case, and put the plant in the backseat of my car. She grinned again, said she hoped it would work for me, and then told me to water it every day when I woke up, and she would email the other instructions in a few days, since it wouldn't bloom for a while anyway. Before she got in her car, she said, "I suggest keeping it on your nightstand. Maybe it's the placebo effect, but I feel like it works better when you keep it in the same room where you sleep." I was unlocking my car when she said that, and I stopped. "What about pollinating? Doesn't it need to be outside to bloom?" I wasn't great with plants, but my mom loved them, and I'd learned a little here and there from her. I had a vague understanding that flowering plants needed to be pollinated by some type of bug in order to really grow. Apparently there's a tree or something that's so old it's pollinated by beetles, because it evolved before bees. But plants were my mom's hyperfixation, not mine. But instead she said, "They self-pollinate." Again, I won't bore you with the specifics, but trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I've been working with this plant for a long time now. So I did. I trusted her, and I took the plant home with me. I set it on my nightstand, watered it, and laid down. Obviously, I didn't notice any changes right away. I watered the plant faithfully, watching the slow progress it made as it climbed steadily towards my ceiling. I found myself fascinated by the plant, watching it when I couldn't sleep, entranced by the way it slowly wound and curved its way up. There were a few times where I found myself thinking that at least I had something new to do while I was lying awake, even if this silly plant never helped me sleep. Finally, after, I think a few weeks, or maybe a month or two, I wasn't paying super close attention. I got my first bloom. To be honest, I didn't want to pluck it. It was like a combination between a crocus, an iris, and a magnolia blossom. The petals were silver at the center of the plant, stretching out into a midnight blue that took my breath away, and they almost seemed to sigh out of the plant, like a puff of mist on a clear winter night. I was afraid if I got too close, if I so much as breathed on it too hard, it would disappear. I hesitated to pluck it for a few days, but I finally gave in. I had been looking up the proper way to dry and store herbs, and I had ordered a little enclosed rack just for that purpose. I hung the bloom up on the drying rack, went to work, and forgot about it. ADHD, what can I say? Until the next bloom appeared on the plant. When the next bloom unfurled, I remembered I had one drying and ran into my kitchen. There it was, dry and ready to be used. I rubbed one of the dried petals between my hands, over top of my pillow, until a fine blue dust slowly shimmered into existence on the white pillowcase. It was only 8 at that point, so I got up, did some chores, and went back after a few hours. Shortly after 10, I lay down and... nothing. I lay down. There was no magical sensation of sleep, no sudden drowsiness. I was just laying on my pillow, and then it was morning. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember dreaming. It was like all the time from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. was just snipped away. In some ways it was really nice, better than laying awake all night wishing for sleep anyway. I can't say I felt particularly rested that first night, more disoriented than anything else, but I'm pretty used to that feeling, so I went about my day as normal. When I got home from work that afternoon, I remembered Amy and pulled up my phone to email her, so I could let her know it seemed to be working so far, but I couldn't find her email. I figured I must have deleted it without meaning to, so I looked her up on Facebook, but she wasn't there. That wasn't too weird. A lot of people I know have started getting away from Facebook, so I looked her up on Instagram but still couldn't find her. I barely slept that night, not because of my insomnia, but because I was trying so hard to find Amy and I just couldn't. Google searches didn't return anything. I couldn't find her in any city or state databases. I couldn't even find any references to her on the website for our high school. They do this time machine thing where you can look people up, actually super cool. It was like Amy never existed. I don't remember getting in bed, but I woke up in time for my first alarm, snuggled down under the covers. I got up and started getting ready for work, resolving to myself that I would find my old yearbook and locate Amy somehow, but by the time I got to work I had completely forgotten about my search. When I got home that night, I remembered briefly, but I was so tired all I wanted to do was lay down. I went to my couch first, played on my phone and read for a bit, then drifted to my bed. I laid down but sleep refused to come as I tossed and turned. After an hour I broke, got up and retrieved one of the petals from my kitchen, then crumbled it onto my pillow. I drifted off while staring at the plant and had a single dream. In my dream I was trying to water the plant. I would fill a pitcher with water, but when I tried to empty the water onto the plant, something else would come out instead. Sometimes it was more dirt, sometimes it was a different liquid, sometimes it was nothing at all. When I woke up in the morning I felt disoriented again, but slightly more rested than usual. I didn't have to work, so I stayed in bed for a little while and relaxed. After a bit I remembered my abandoned search and hurled myself out of bed to run to my garage. I dug through box after box until I finally had all 4 of my high school yearbooks. I flipped through them all looking for Amy, and in every single one, I found her. Crisis I made up in my head averted. I packed the boxes back up and went on about my day. As I've said before, I'm not a smart man. I should have listened to my gut instinct. I went about my life normally, taking care of the plant. I named him Charlie, a normal part of my day. I would wake up, dump the remnants of my glass of water into the soil, pluck new blooms and hang them up to dry, then go on with my day. At night, I would sprinkle the powder onto my pillow, lay down, and wake up in the morning. I finally felt like a normal person. It may sound weird, but I know my fellow insomniacs will get me. I've always envied people who can just lay down and sleep. And I don't just mean people who say they're out as soon as they hit the pillow. I mean I envy every single person who regularly gets a good night's sleep without the use of drugs. And for the first time in my life, I finally knew what that felt like. Which is why I ignored all the red flags. Now some of the red flags are obvious to you, I'm sure. Bought a plant out of the back of a Subaru in a parking lot late at night from someone I hadn't seen in almost 20 years. Didn't do any research, etc. But there are others I should probably tell you about too. like the fact that most of my dreams seemed to revolve around Charlie. That's weird, right? Pretty much every night I would dream about something to do with Charlie. I ignored it. I figured my subconscious was so excited to finally be getting regular sleep that it was hyper-fixated on what was causing it. Then there was the fact that sometimes I would just wake up in my bed without ever remembering getting in bed in the first place. When that happened, I usually couldn't remember any dreams either, and to be honest, it made me feel a lot better about getting in bed at a reasonable time every night. Then there were the dreams. I don't know how to explain this, but they were addictive. On the nights when I did dream, it would always start out being about Charlie. Then it would move on into some other subject matter. The dreams were vivid, vibrant, they almost felt more real than the real world. I would wake up some mornings in tears because I had to leave whatever incredible world my subconscious had been in. I had a few weeks where I was getting the best sleep of my life, having the most amazing dreams, and feeling rested every single day. Any weirdness surrounding the flower was easy to forget about, especially in comparison to how nice it was to finally be sleeping. Then one day I forgot to give Charlie water. Based on what Amy had said, I had assumed the plant would wither or stop producing flowers if I failed to water it. But when I woke up the next day, a cold sense of dread in my gut as I remembered that Charlie hadn't been watered the day before. I was relieved to see that Charlie was perfectly fine. I apologized, gave him an extra helping of water, and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. It was 5 p.m. I flung myself out of bed, as if moving fast enough would let me make it to work on time, 9 hours ago, then stood in my bedroom feeling confused and a little scared. I've never slept for more than 8 or 10 hours, and I've certainly never slept for almost 20 hours before. After a few minutes of confused standing, I grabbed my phone again and called my boss. I told him I was sick and had accidentally overslept. I blamed new medication, and I think he probably bought it. He gave me a warning, told me not to let it happen again, and that was it. But the whole experience didn't just rattle me. I was oddly terrified. I went back to my old yearbook, found Amy again, and looked up just her last name. This time, I actually found something useful, her mom's Facebook. I sent a message saying I knew her daughter in high school and wanted to ask her something, left my phone number and said if she was comfortable talking with me, to give me a call. I didn't really want to go back to sleep that night. I didn't trust sleep as much anymore, so I spent most of the night playing video games before crashing on my couch. I got a normal fitful sleep that left me feeling tired and groggy in the morning. Perfect, just how I like it. After 3 days of couch sleeping, I finally got a call from Amy's mom, Meredith. I didn't recognize the number at first and answered, expecting just a regular spam call. The woman on the other end said, "Is this James, Amy's friend?" I grinned. I had finally made some progress. "Yeah, this must be Meredith." She sounded tired. "That's right. You should be able to get permission to visit her from the hospital she's in if that's why you wanted to talk." It felt like all the air had been slammed out of me. All I could say was, "What?" She sighed. "Is that not what you're calling about?" I was flustered. What happened to Amy? She seemed fine the last time I saw her. Meredith laughed, but it was humorless. "I take it you haven't seen Amy in quite some time. Why are you calling?" I was quiet for a moment as I tried to collect myself. Finally, I said, "Can we meet for coffee or something? I feel like this conversation might be easier in person." I heard movement on the other line as Meredith said, "Sure, I'm heading to First Memorial Hospital right now. I'll meet you there. We can get coffee in the hospital cafe. It's really not bad." I chuckled uncomfortably. "Okay, it'll take me about 20 minutes to get there. Is that okay?" Meredith said it was, and I rushed to grab my keys, then got in my car. I drove to First Memorial, feeling like reality had just collapsed around my ears. Apparently something had happened to Amy right after I last saw her, which didn't explain why I couldn't find her online anywhere, but it was a start to unraveling the weird little mystery I was in. I got to First Memorial, parked across the street because I refused to pay for hospital parking. That should honestly be illegal, and walked inside. The cafe was right next to the visitor's entrance, and sitting at a table was a woman who looked a lot like an older version of Amy. I smiled as I walked towards her, then extended my hand for a shake. I said, "Hi ma'am, I'm James, Amy's friend." Meredith smiled sadly. "You can call me Meredith. I love that you youngsters always introduce yourselves as her friends. Makes me feel like she might wake up one day." Nothing she said was making sense, so I excused myself to get a cup of coffee. Once I had it in hand, she said, "Do you want to walk up to her room with me? We can discuss whatever is going on the way." I agreed and followed her to the elevators. It seemed to be a familiar journey for her, and I felt strange beginning my story right away. I asked, "So do you mind telling me what happened to her?" Meredith gave me a quizzical look but said, "Okay, well, you know she graduated high school and went abroad to study. She met her girlfriend there, they got engaged, and came back to the States together. Then, about a year later, I got a call from Camilla. She said Amy hadn't been sleeping well for a while. Then all of a sudden, Cammy got up one day and Amy wouldn't wake up. She looked like she was sleeping peacefully, but she wouldn't wake up. We called an ambulance and..." She trailed off as we exited the elevator. The rest of her story was pretty clear. As we approached the doorway to room 417, Meredith said, "So why are you here? I thought all of Amy's close friends knew about all of this. Not to be rude, but..." Again, she trailed off and I hesitated for a moment before saying, "Okay, this is going to sound super weird, but please give me a chance. I knew Amy in high school, we talked a little after graduation, then we pretty much fell out of touch. Until a few months ago when I got an email from her." Meredith's eyebrows had been climbing up her forehead the entire time I was talking, and by the time I said she had emailed me, they were basically in her hairline. She didn't believe me and I didn't blame her. I continued. "I responded to the email and she said she had this miracle insomnia cure. I've been an insomniac basically my whole life, so I was really hopeful. So we met up and she gave me..." Meredith cut me off. "She gave you a plant named Charlie." Her words shocked me so badly I felt like I had been punched, and I know I reeled back as if I had been hit. I said, "Well, yes, but no, but..." I named the plant Charlie, and I never told her that. Meredith shook her head and opened the door to room 417, then gestured for me to walk in. There were 2 beds in the large room, divided by a curtain. In one bed was Amy, looking exactly as she had when I saw her a few months ago. In the other bed was a woman with dark hair and olive skin. They both looked asleep, as if they would wake up at any moment. Meredith was studying me carefully as she pulled out a chair and sat down. She said, "All right, I'll tell you the whole story. Amy got in a car wreck right before she left for the study abroad program. She suffered a TBI and developed pretty severe insomnia. When she came back from Italy, Cammy," here she gestured to the pretty olive-skinned woman, "wasn't the only thing she brought back with her. They also had this plant they called Charlie. I never got a good explanation on where it came from, but it was really beautiful. It was clearly their prized possession too. It sat on the mantle in their home, the place of honor you might call it. All she would tell me was that Charlie helped her sleep better. She explained the whole process to me and offered me some of the flowers in case I ever needed help sleeping. I had a strange feeling about it though, so I said no. But she and Cammy adored their plant, so I didn't want to say anything to poo-poo it. Then after a while, Amy started having trouble getting up. She was sleeping longer. She and Cammy were fighting a lot, so I thought she was just depressed. I wrote it off as normal. I didn't..." Meredith sniffled. There was clearly still a lot of regret there. She went on. "Then I got that call from Cammy. She kept saying something about Amy not doing it right. She kept talking about Charlie, but I didn't understand what she was talking about, so I didn't really absorb it. Amy was in the hospital in a coma for 2 months before Cammy joined her. I don't know what happened. We cleared out their home and sold it when doctors said they didn't think the 2 of them would wake up anytime soon. I didn't see the plant and I didn't even think about it, until now." At some point during her story, I had collapsed into the chair next to her, and I was just staring at Amy and the other woman. Finally, I managed to say, "Amy didn't come out in high school." Meredith shook her head. "Right, she came out to me while she was abroad. I think she was scared to come out until she really knew for sure. I took a deep breath. I never knew she was gay, but when I saw her a few weeks ago, she told me she had gotten married. I don't remember her saying what her wife's name was, but she told me she was married to a woman she had met in college. Meredith leaned towards me. Her voice came out in a scared whisper. I dream about her all the time. Dreams where she's holding Charlie and begging me to take him. She tells me how much she and Cammy miss me, and she begs me to join her. Tears were forming in her eyes. The dreams had clearly been very hard on her. She grabbed my wrist and I was shocked by how strong her grip was. She studied my eyes intensely. The dream stopped in September. Something in my chest, some little shred of hope that this was all just craziness with a reasonable explanation, melted into a pool of terror. I whispered back, "I saw Amy in September." Meredith nodded sadly. "I can't help you, James. I'm sorry." I sagged back against my chair. "You don't have any ideas that could help? Any information I might find useful?" Meredith shook her head, a resolute calm turning her face to stone. "No, I'm sorry. I need you to leave now. I can't have another person on my conscience. I wish you all the best, James." I left the hospital feeling like someone had just popped my birthday balloon. I felt like I now understood just enough to understand that this was insane and I have no idea what's going on. I wish I had a better resolution, but I don't. I'm still watering Charlie faithfully every day, still dreaming about him when I use the petals. But I feel trapped. I can't sleep at all when I don't use the flower, but when I do use it, I'm sleeping longer and longer each time. I hope I'm wrong, but I think I'll be joining Cammy and Amy before too long.